So, the translations are out for My Hero Academia, Manga Chapter 357, and oh my gosh, there's so much that we need to talk about in this chapter, so let's dive right into the review right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Manager, and I'm here to do my review of My Hero Academia, Manga Chapter 357, and oh my gosh, there's some shocking stuff that happens in this chapter. We get a little bit more development and understanding of Endeavor, we get a cool fight against Endeavor against All For One, and potentially we get to see the fate of All For One, and it's not what you expect, but it's completely plausible with All For One as a character. So let's dive right into the review proper and let's talk about the action in this chapter first. Because there is a fair amount of action in this chapter, and we do get a fair amount of cool panels in this chapter, particularly when it comes to Endeavor with his entire arm missing, but he is combining it with a big old F-off fire blast, and he does that multiple times against All For One in this chapter in amazing paneling. But we also get to see a little bit more of All For One and how we see that breaking the mask does have an effect on All For One, but not to the same extent that you would think. It really prevents him from moving as effectively as he wants to, but he is still able to fight and use the quirks. But even with that, All For One is just being hammered in by Endeavor with so many fire attacks. Because even though All For One doesn't take the massive hit at first because he uses a shielding quirk, Endeavor is able to break through it with his vanishing jet burn, and it's just slamming All For One into the ground, even to the point where we get to see Kamui Woods actually say something in the story, which is him basically pulling a Best Genius and literally pulling people out of the way of the attack. But even so, the action in this chapter is non-stop. Even to the point where we get to see something new from Endeavor as All For One is reaching to try and take Endeavor's quirk because he can barely move. And as Endeavor is taking All For One and just brushing him fast against the ground, he shoots literal fire out of his eyes to burn All For One's hand. So the action here is great, but what is even greater is the more characterization that we get with Endeavor. And that even though he is boiling mad, he still has the ability to make calm and collected decisions against All For One, which Hawks brings up why he didn't really finish All For One in that instance, and Endeavor retorts with a very logical understanding and idea. And what pretty much happens after Endeavor is just dragging All For One across the field, setting the entire forest on fire and destroying everything in his path, Endeavor is beginning to really come to an understanding of himself and how he's able to push All For One to the extreme, and that All For One's tricks won't work on Endeavor anymore, and how Endeavor is beginning to accept that when it comes to his faults, his flaws, his retributions, that he's going to continue to hate them. He's going to continue to hate himself so that he could eventually build a better world for the students, for his sons, for his children. And this idea is punctuated with something that was so unexpected that it pretty much destroyed Twitter when this scene came out. And it's that we get to see a panel of all of the students of Class 1A more or less fully grown. We get to see a more adult Uraraka, Ira, we get to see a little bit of Froppy, Bakugo, Kirishima, Momo, as well as Shoto, which could be hinting more at their adult design, so hopefully we'll be able to see that at the end of the story. And if we don't, I will be a little bit disappointed and saddened that we didn't get a full scope of them, but most likely it's going to be developed more when the actual anime comes out or when this chapter gets officially released. But overall, Endeavor has come to the conclusion that he's going to bear the weight of the world, bear the faults and the flaws and the bad and the misdeeds that were done by the adults, and have them be upon himself, and that he's going to continue to hate it upon himself so that the kids can have a better life and create a better future that was ruined by the characters such as Endeavor, such as All Might, such as All For One. And that he's going to end all of this hatred by trying and killing All For One. So once again, it's very cool to see this type of characterization from Endeavor and how he goes from someone who we could have guessed hated himself or that he hated how powerful All For One is, to come into a man or a person that is willing to bear all of the burdens that he has done and all of the burdens that everyone else has done to the world, so that he could create a world for his children as well as the youth, to create a better world that won't be ruined by characters or people like himself and like All For One. And so that is pretty cool, but that's not even the most shocking moment of all of this chapter. Because towards the beginning of this chapter, All For One brings up this idea that Endeavor is forcing him to relive a trauma. And his trauma is the initial fight that he had against All Might, and how All Might, even in his heavily injured state, was still walking towards All For One and trying to kill him. And how he says that Endeavor had that similar mentality and he didn't think that that would be the case. But as All For One is dying, and as Endeavor is trying to confirm that, oh yeah, you may have regeneration, but if you don't, it doesn't matter because your body isn't as durable as Shigaraki's, so this is going to kill you, as he does a prominence burn. But as this is all happening, apparently Hawk senses something wrong is going on with All For One. And All For One kind of confirms that he is dead, but that it doesn't matter because that he has an ace up his sleeve. And that there's something that he wanted to try right before he dies. And that little something could involve Eri and the quirky racing bullets. Because as we see a panel of Eri with the actual quirky racing bullets as All For One is giving this speech, he finishes it off in a very similar way to how he compares Endeavor and All Might about how heroes are the most dangerous when they are injured, but he also says that villains are also the most dangerous when they are injured or when they are on the brink of death. That villains, as well as heroes, are willing to risk their lives. And as this is happening, we get a panel of All For One's eye and ear as it seems to be regenerating even with this fire. And the chapter ends with something going on within the first user communicating with Deku, as it appears as if some individuals are flying towards him. End of chapter. So, as we predicted, All For One had something up his sleeves, and we don't know exactly what it is. Most likely than not, it has something to do with Eri. Either he's able to use Eri's rewind in a way to sort of regenerate his body back to the point that it was at the beginning of his reign, before his fight with All Might. Maybe it's some type of explosion that is going to eradicate Endeavor's quirk. Maybe it's just a quirky racing bullets that is actually going to be injected into Endeavor so that he can no longer be a hero. Or maybe it has something to do with these flying objects flying towards Deku. Maybe there are Nomu that have been reverted back to their human state but still have the power of a Nomu. Maybe there are multiple All For Ones heading towards the direction of Deku to try and kill and capture him. We just don't know, but what we all expected is that All For One had something up his sleeve. And the idea that villains are also willing to risk their lives and that also makes them more dangerous could also be more foreshadowing to Dabi also coming back and being even more dangerous now that he is on the brink of death or is about to die. So overall, I really enjoyed this chapter of My Hero Academia. We got to see a little bit more with Endeavor and how he is coping with the idea that the sins that he has committed will not be passed on to the next generation, and that he wants them to have better lives for his son and the other children, so that he is willing to take on the hatred and continuing to hate himself if it means that they're able to benefit. We get to see some awesome fighting in this chapter with Endeavor going all out on All For One, the potential death of All For One in this chapter, as well as the potential reveal and hinting to what All For One's plan is and the things that he had set in motion that could come back and turn the tide of this war in the villain's favor. So we're just gonna have to wait and see what All For One's plan is. So hopefully it's going to be something amazing and unexpected. So it's probably going to be something amazing and unexpected and related to Deku and One For All. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about this chapter. Hopefully you enjoyed the chapter. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. And if you did, leave a like down below and leave a comment down below on what you thought about this chapter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!